Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and I'm back with another publisher ranking video. I've done several of these by now. I've done Simon, Awakened Realms, I've done Burnt Island Games, and Chip Theory Games. I may have just done those 4. I don't remember if I've done more than that, but I've done at least those 4 as far as ranking a bunch of publishers' games in one video. Generally, the criteria to be part of this video, the criteria to do one of these videos is that it has to be a publisher that I have played a lot of their games. It's not that interesting if I've played 3 of their games. I don't have to have played most of their games, but it is certainly a plus if I've played most of their games. I'd say it's more that if it's manageable to play most of their games, I want to have played most of their games, versus if you're like Rio Grande Games, then having played a bunch would be enough for me. But that's neither here nor there. I guess it's a little here, because generally in these videos I say, hey, if there's a publisher you want to see me do this with, by all means, make a note down below of a publisher you want to see me do this with, because I will probably try to, if it fits those criteria, that I've played a bunch of their games and or most of their games enough to do one of these videos. But today we are here with Roxley, and I should note for the record that Roxley and Dice Throne are 2 separate companies, but they have been one company at one point, and also there's overlap-ish, and I'm also not going to do a separate video on Dice Throne, so I am including these together in this one video. I'm counting both of them together in this one video, so this is a ranking of Roxley and Dice Throne products together in one video. Speaking of which, from all of Roxley / Dice Throne products, I believe I haven't played only one of them, and that's a game called Guerrilla Marketing, a play on guerrilla marketing. I've actually seen a demo of this one time, but I've never actually played it. I saw a demo at a convention once. It looked fun, it looked cool, looked interesting. Never played it myself, it won't be in this list. But the other games that they have will be in this list. I'll also note before I dive into this that I am combining things where I feel they deserve to be combined, and separating things where I feel they deserve to be separated. That will make more sense as we go through it, but effectively, I will say that Roxley and Dice Throne have a lot of overlapping products. There's multiple Brasses, there's multiple Santorinis, there's multiple Dice Thrones. In some cases, I'm just bundling them all together, and in some cases I'm separating them, primarily where I feel my opinion does differentiate from those things within a category. Hopefully that all makes sense. Timestamps to everything down below. Let's go ahead and start off. And we're going to start off with a bit of a caveat / asterisk. I'm going from lowest to highest over here. We're starting off with Excalibur. Excalibur is their newest upcoming game, and it's one that I debated whether to include on this list at all, but I figured I'd include it with a bit of an asterisk, because I've played Excalibur. It's fun. I like it. It's probably the one I like the least of their games. That's also because of the target audience for it. I think it's focusing more on more of a mass market-ish approach to it, but with an appeal to gamers, which I think does work. It kind of feels a bit like Love Letter in the feeling you get from it. It's all about trying to pick various tokens and then trying to not be left, well, it's a little more complicated than that, because it depends on there's a few ways to win or lose at the end of it all, but a lot of it comes down to trying to manage where certain pieces end up through the use of a lot of abilities as you go through it, and the use of using certain characters. Again, it has a vibe like Love Letter. The version I played is still very much in the prototype phase. Lots of development has gone through, so it already has improved. I know that feedback I gave, they've already incorporated on the game, so it already is a better version than the one I played. I still am of the opinion that it's less likely to go higher on this list for me, because of the fact that just in terms of the other games we're looking at, like, I like Love Letter, it's fun, but it's a lower down list for me, and Excalibur kind of falls into the same place for me. It's fun, I enjoy it, I'll happily play it again, but I think it's one that I like less than some others on this list. Coming in next up, we have Super Motherload. Super Motherload is a kind of polyomino-ish mining game. I played it a long time ago. I only played it once, so I can't comment heavily on it. I remember enjoying it while not being overly impressed by it. It has Roxley's usual great production, although I will say probably on the lower end of their great production, but it's one that I definitely enjoyed. I thought it was a good game, but there's so many games in the genre out there, and it's not one that necessarily wowed me. From there, we have Santorini, New York. I am specifically separating Santorini, New York out from the other Santorinis because I think it is the worst version of it, and yet it's still a great game. Like, from this point onwards, honestly, we have Excalibur, which is like good fun. We have Super Motherload, which was good, but probably not memorable, at least not for me. And then onwards here, Santorini onwards, we're just left with good games. Very, very, very good games. Santorini, New York is just a worse version of Santorini, unfortunately, which is why it's coming in at our number 3 spot. All depends if you're counting up or counting down. It's why it's coming in 3rd on this list in terms of the 3rd least favorite, or whatever you want to call it. But Santorini, New York is still fun. It still holds the charm of Santorini. It still does a good job of giving you a tactical two-player strategy game with some interesting twists on the original Santorini. Unfortunately, those twists weren't better. It didn't make the game better, it just made the game different. I think the original Santorini is cleaner, more streamlined. Thematically, it's a better system. Everything about Santorini is better than Santorini, New York, at least to me, which is why Santorini, New York, it goes this low. But to be very clear, it's still a great game, it's just that other Santorinis beat it out. From there we go to General Dice Throne. Now for Dice Throne over here, we're going to be a little bit complicated here, but for Dice Throne right now, I'm combining all the character Dice Thrones, but none of the cooperative Dice Thrones. We'll get to those throughout this video. Oh, I should give another asterisk. I also haven't played Dice Throne Adventures. I've played Dice Throne, I've played Dice Throne Missions, I have not played Dice Throne Adventures, so that's also not being counted in this list. But from Dice Throne, I'm counting all characters equal Season 1, Season 2, Marvel, X-Men. I'm counting all of it as one general category. I don't feel a strong distinguishing difference between playing any of the various characters, even including Deadpool, all that. Don't get me wrong, I have preferred characters and characters that I think are better, but I'm counting it as one general Dice Throne head-to-head system. Dice Throne is a ton of fun. It's a great game. It's a visually incredibly attractive. It's one of those games that makes you want to play it because of how good the production is. The gameplay is incredibly simple in a good way. It's just the Yahtzee style dice rolling, combining for abilities, powering up your character, going head to head. My biggest critique against it is I just don't think there's enough variability to justify the 40 or so characters they have at this point, which I think is far too many considering most of them have the same core gameplay structure as the rest, and there's always like a little twist that makes it different, but there's like these big character boxes, like this is only 8 characters over here, and a lot of them have a general similarity with some small things that make them stand out. I don't think they distinguish themselves enough to be worth having as many as they do. That said, they're not just appealing to people who want different mechanics, they're appealing to people who want different IPs, whether you want fantasy, whether you want Marvel, X-Men, and then there's people like me who are just completionists who get stuck kind of wanting everything along the way while not needing everything along the way. And so Dice Throne, though, is a good game. It is still lower than other Roxley games for me, but it's one that is very satisfying and I do enjoy. And the next game we're going to talk about is actually a little bit of a question mark, which we'll explain in a second, because next on the list we have Steampunk Rally. Now I am including Steampunk Rally and Steampunk Rally Fusion together in this one category. 2 different games, enough similarity as far as the general feeling of them that I'm including them together. And this is an excellent racing game that I've had so much fun playing, but also comes with some costs. The question part is I own Dice Throne, I don't own Steampunk Rally, but I do think Steampunk Rally is a better game, and it is a better game to me, but Dice Throne is easier to table with others, which is why I have it, and Steampunk Rally unfortunately loses to other games despite me enjoying it more than I do Dice Throne. See, Steampunk Rally is a very clever racing system as you build out your steampunk airship with a ton of bits while trying to power it up as you ultimately race through the finish line. It's a ton of fun, lots of interesting abilities that make it interesting, lots of dice placement that makes it a fun challenge. It is beautiful, it has great production, and it's just a good overall racing game. I think that ultimately racing games have never been my best genre to own. They're always games that I enjoy, and they're rarely games that I actually end up keeping. There are times, but it's certainly the minority as far as keeping racing games, and my biggest complaint is it's very much a heads-down game where you're doing your own thing, and it's so easy to cheat, and unintentionally. Intentionally cheating, I just don't play with those people, but it's so easy to mess up unintentionally, and you have no idea what's going on. You're running your own little engine and Tableau, and you're like, I moved this many spaces, and I used these dice and did these things. It's very hard to track what's going on, and it does work best at higher player counts. All of that makes it a slightly harder game to table, but it is a very satisfying game when you do. From there, we have Dice Throne Missions. Dice Throne Missions does go a step higher than regular Dice Throne for me. For me, so far, it is my preferred way of playing through Dice Throne, having played through several of the missions in Dice Throne Missions, and have not even been able to properly having done the proper progression of it. See, Dice Throne Missions gives you cooperative gameplay, and again, while I've read the rules for Dice Throne Adventures, I have not played it, so I can't comment on that, but Dice Throne Missions was an overall satisfying puzzle of going through an initial step, then followed by a boss fight, so you have kind of like fighting the minions, then fighting the boss, and like 20 different missions to go through, utilizing any combination of characters, whether X-Men, whether Marvel, whether fantasy if you want to mess with it. You can just have fun playing through these missions, utilizing your different characters in a way that is cooperative as opposed to head-to-head, which honestly in a weird way is kind of my preferred way to play Dice Throne, but if done well, and Dice Throne Missions does it well, at least for me. From there, we go to Santorini. Santorini is excellent. It is so good. This is like the first Roxley game I ever got. I'm pretty sure. I think it was. Certainly the first one I backed. But it's a great game. This is still the original version that I backed. I'm currently waiting on the Golden Sphinx version, which we will get to shortly. But Santorini over here, Santorini is such a good two-player abstract game with a ton of variability from the various gods, the powers, the abilities, all of that. And it's a very clean game that is incredibly satisfying to play through. It's one that I never consider getting rid of because it's one of my favorite abstracts, and it's one that whenever I return to it, I feel satisfied by the challenging puzzle that it provides and the variability that the heroes and gods provide to the experience as well. But from there, we have Radlands, which is even better. Radlands is a two-player it's a two-player card system where you basically lane battler. You're lane battling, sort of. You basically get to draft these decks these bases at the beginning of the game, and the bases define a lot of your strategy for the core puzzle. But then from those bases, you're basically drawing cards from a common deck and trying to figure out how to build up your defense, how to manage your defense and your offense, utilizing the unique powers of your bases, and trying to figure out how to outmaneuver your opponent in the game. The bases make the game incredibly satisfying. There's an entire expansion release that was just bases. That was the expansion, just more bases, because that adds to a lot of how you're going to play the game. It's kind of the thing that defines your play style and play strategy, and it does so in a game that is very easy to table and very satisfying when you do so. I highly recommend Radlands. I think it's an excellent game, an excellent two-player game, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised they don't have a solo mode for it. I think they should come up with a solo mode for Radlands. I think that would probably be fun. For right now, though, it still works great as a two-player experience. But from there, we have Santorini, Riddle of the Sphinx. And this is a little bit of a placeholder on the placement of this. It's possible that this one won't be as high for me later, but from playing the prototype of Santorini Riddle the Sphinx, I thought it was a great way to take all the things you learned in Santorini and to give you a challenging set of puzzles with a reward progression system that I was incredibly hooked by. Again, combining Roxley's production, which is top-notch and pulls you in from the get-go, combined with Santorini's excellent two-player gameplay, and then giving you a solo mode. Sort of how I mentioned like Radlands deserves a good solo mode, I thought Santorini gave you a great solo mode. Santorini Riddle the Sphinx gave you a great solo campaign sort of to play through, giving you the best elements of Santorini in a puzzle. And so I'm incredibly intrigued by that. There's a degree of newness here. It could be over time that Santorini will rise above Riddle the Sphinx, but for right now, Riddle the Sphinx to me is my current preferred way to play through Santorini. From there, we have Brass, and this is going to be both Brass, Birmingham and Lancashire. I do prefer Birmingham, but ultimately my placement of them wouldn't really change significantly. Brass, designed by Martin Wallace, is an incredible design. One of my favorite Euros in my collection. I played the original Age of Industry way back in the day. I don't think I actually ever played the original Brass, but I went from Age of Industry to Roxley's Brass, one of the earlier crowdfunding campaigns that I backed, and again, the production value combined with a game system that I knew I loved, and I have not been let down by it. It is such a good experience. It is so satisfying to play through Brass. The level of the managing the market, managing the goods, managing your own building, and the timing of how you utilize cards and how you take control of the board in the dual phases of the game. Both Lancashire and Birmingham provide excellent tense experiences that are so economically sound, and the entire principle of the game, I mean, the loans you take, the loans you pay back, everything about the game is an incredibly satisfying Euro puzzle, and there's a reason it's the #1 game on Board Game Geek, and I think it's a spot that is well earned. Although for me, my favorite game from Roxley is currently Skyrise. Skyrise, to me, shot to the top of my list. This is one that I've been having so much fun playing through. I enjoyed playing the prototype way back in the day, but I've enjoyed playing the final game even more. It is a better... I don't know if they've changed anything from the prototype to the final game. I don't remember what the details are. All I know is when I've dove into the final game, it has been so much fun to play through Skyrise. The bidding process that Skyrise gives you, based off of the original Metropolis, is so well done as far as the challenge and puzzle it gives. That's very unlike any other game out there. Nocturne from Flat Out Games took the same system, but I think Skyrise still does it better. Skyrise gives you a clean, simple, the production is incredible. Many have said over the top and too much, which I don't disagree with. It is very much over the top and too much, but I still like the production of it, and I think the gameplay backs it up. This is one of the things, like one of the problems Roxley has, is sometimes the production is so good that I will overlook gameplay that doesn't appeal to me as much. I think if Dice Throne were not nearly as visually appealing, I'd probably skip over it. But it is visually appealing and the gameplay is good. And in the case of Skyrise, it's visually appealing and the gameplay is great. It is incredibly solid gameplay. I'm sure there'll be many out there who are offended that I put Brass lower than Skyrise. But for me, Skyrise is so clean and well done at what it does that despite me appreciating Brass and thinking that Brass is also incredible, Skyrise is currently my favorite game from Roxley Games. Although I do reserve the right to swap these at any point This used to be higher for me. It's gone down a little bit over time. Skyrise is currently on the way up. Times are changing, so are ratings. Anyways, that is basically my rating list for Roxley games. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 distinct ratings over here, ignoring Guerrilla Marketing and ignoring Dice One Adventures, which I have not played, as well as an asterisk next to Excalibur, which I played once during the prototype phase. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if there are other publishers you want me to do this with, please by all means put them in the comments, because I will get to them sooner or later if I've played enough of their games. As always, and until next time, I hope you have a good one.